Hi, Sujata. Can you hear me?
Yeah, hi. I can hear you.
Great. So we have with us Ms. Sujata Raskar. She's going to be talking about women in cybersecurity, bringing holistic and futuristic solutions. So, Sujata, I'm just going to do a brief introduction about you. In the meantime, you can go ahead and start your screen share while I just finish up the introduction.
Sure, thank you.
So a little bit about Sujata. Sujata has more than 18 years of experience in the cybersecurity domain. She is working as a principal consultant for the organization, which provides cybersecurity advisory and consulting services to global clients. She has a rich experience working with multiple global clients in varied industries and industry verticals like banking and finance, manufacturing, retail, utilities, and government. Her expertise ranges from security solutions, designing enterprise security architecture, and state of the art security operations centers, SOCs, to performing risk assessment before and after cloud migration. As a cybersecurity advisor, she has helped clients to define organizational security standards, cybersecurity policies, and set up SOC processes in compliance with industry standards like NIST, PCI DSS, ISO 27001, HIPAA, and many others. Her experiences are backed by the cybersecurity specialization from Georgia Institute of Technology and security certifications like CISSP, CISM, CC, SK, ISO 27001, Lead Auditor, ITIL, TOGAF, and many more. With that, I'm handing the stage over to Sujata. Over to you, Sujata.
Thank you so much. Yeah, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, because this is a global event, and I know you guys are from across the world. First of all, thank you, Rochester, for giving me this opportunity to share my experience and my knowledge with the larger audience. So today I'm going to speak about the holistic view of security and the futuristic approach. Before starting the topic, I would like to share something, how I got into the cybersecurity. Uh, when I started my career, I started my career into the implementing the server operating system. That time, Novel Netware was a server operating system, and in one of the very prestigious school in Mumbai, India, I implemented this Novel Netware system. And after 15 days, I got a call from the person who was conducting the security training for this particular school, saying that students are messing up, each other's program, and they're deleting, updating, or totally messing up the things. So what can we do, Sujata, to prevent this thing? This was my first actually encounter to the cybersecurity. That time, even security was not the word. So I said, okay, hold on, let me go back and check. That time, internet was also not so popular, so that you can just type the question in Google and you get answer how to protect the things. I went back, I just looked into my books, and I realized that, I can actually set up the security or the access control onto the folders. And that is my first, brief touch of the security. And I got so fascinated seeing the things that I can control, actually everything, what is happening into the server or what is happening to the data. And that's how I started my cybersecurity career. And now we have reached to such a extent. Kathy has explained, right, very elaborately how the cybersecurity is important in our personal life. And we keep on seeing many attacks which are happening every now and then onto the organization. So cybersecurity has got a lot of importance. And today I'm going to talk about the holistic view of a cybersecurity. What does it mean by holistic view of a cybersecurity? That is what I will be talking. What it consists the holistic view of cybersecurity, and how to make sure that we are actually working at the interest of the business and not adding the security just for protecting the data and hindering the client experience. And that is what you will be getting from the holistic view of security. And then we will move on to the cyber resilience, because see how much security technologies we are implementing into our organization, still attacks are happening. The business are down for weeks together because of the cybersecurity incidents, and that's where the cyber resilience is going to come into the picture. And I'll talk about the cyber resilience. What is cyber resilience? What is the requirement to implement the cyber resilience, and what are the benefits which we are going to get out of the cyber resilience? And we'll look at the cyber resilience framework. So now let us understand what is the holistic view to the cyber security. When we look at the security, normally what we do is we just say that, okay, I want to go for the perimeter security, so I will need to have the firewalls, VPN gateways, and all those kind of things. I want identity access management to manage my users. I want application security for my applications. So what we do is we actually keep on adding the security tools and technology in a silos. We don't look the security from the business point of view. So when we are looking at the holistic picture of security, the most important thing is understanding the core activities of a business, what my business is doing. Suppose your organization into the health service provider. So how they are going to treat the patient? Do they have what a portal to register the patient and take the appointments? Do they have what the patients which are there at the home, and you are managing those patients from your centralized system? Or are you going to have these various medical instruments which are connected to the internet, how they are operated, how the doctors are getting access to these equipments, how the doctors are getting access to the patient's information, how the patients are getting access to their own information, or get information from the doctors, and all those things, right? So those are the core activities for the health service provider business. So before even thinking about designing the security, you need to understand what are those core activities. The next thing is, what is the benefit of these core activities the organization is getting? In case of the health service provider, your patients, if you are monitoring your patients from the home and treating them remotely, basically you are actually expanding your business, because then you need not to have restrictions of number of beds available into your hospital. And that is the benefit which your organization is getting by treating the patient from the home. Then you have to craft the security and with the inputs of these 2 points, core activities and the benefits, right? So which are the business critical applications for your organization? So how these applications are used, who is using these applications, from where these are getting used? Are they getting used from the managed devices, or they're getting used from the unmanaged devices? So you will design the security depending on these inputs. For example, if you are monitoring the patients from the home, then how these patients are connecting to the your hospital environment? Are they using the client-based applications, or they are using a web-based applications? How they are getting authenticated? What kind of information they are getting? So that using that, then you will put a proper security controls. The second thing is, when you are implementing the security controls, they should not be disruptive. For example, if you are giving access to the patient's data, or the patients whom you are monitoring from their home, then probably for the first level of getting their appointments and all these things, username and password should be fine. But if they want to check their medical records and treatments and diagnosis for the last 6 months or the past periods, then probably you have to provide the escalated access, having the OTP or something like that. That way, the customer experience, right? The patient will not get irritated every time he has to put in password and wait for the OTP and enter the OTP, and then he can get the access. So that way you can minimize the disruption by having staggered security controls, which will get added as you are actually exposing the users to the critical information. And the next point is, cybersecurity should be adding a value to the business and not disrupting or not become a hindrance to the business as well as the end users. What does it mean by adding the value to the business? So by protecting the customer's data, by protecting the important information, you will actually protect your organization from the data breaches and the fines which organization need to be paying for that. And that is why looking at the holistic view of the security, or from the business point of view, is very, very important. So having said this, now I will move on to the next slide. I'll move on to the next slide, which will give the holistic view. So in this slide, I will be basically talking about the 4 points of the security. One is the requirements gathering from the business point of view. The second will be the data touch point. The third will be the operational requirements from the security point of view. And the last last but not the least is a user management. So let us look at the first point, design inputs. So every organization has got their own security standards, security guidelines, and the best practices. If your organization don't have that, probably you have to insist on developing those security standards and guidelines. Why these security standards, guidelines, and best practices are required for the organization? Because each organization has got their own culture. Some organizations like to restrict the website views from the organizational environment. Some organizations don't need. So that's where the best practices for using the internet, best practices for sharing the information are important for each organization. So you have to, when you are designing the security, you have to consider those security standards, guidelines, and the best practices for your organization. Then your organization will be having a security policies. Each, though your organization may be ISO 27001 certified, which says that you need to have security policies, but there are no standard security policies across the globe. So each organization defines their own security policies. Take example of very simple security policy like a password security policy. So password security policy, one organization will say that my password should be 10 characters, 10 alphanumeric characters long. It should have got capital, it should have got small letters, it should have got alphabets, special characters, etc., etc. The other organization will say that, okay, my organization needs to have 14 characters password. So like that, organization actually craft this security policy as per their requirements or their convenience or what they think is the best for their users. So we need to know these security policies before, because when you are selecting a technical control, you are actually going to, sorry, you have to give me a minute. I'm extremely sorry for this disturbance. So, why understanding security policy is important is because when you are actually selecting the technical controls, you are going to configure these security policies into your technical controls, and to make sure that the security controls has got all the customization requirements as per your security policy. That's why understanding security policies is very important. And you need to understand the industry specific or a country specific security standards. And why this is important? Because a lot of regulatory requirements are coming up. For example, for the personal data protection, almost each country has got their own data protection laws or data protection acts. If you are capturing the data from the European citizen and you are running business across anywhere in the world, the GDPR requirements are applicable to you. So understanding those country-specific requirements is important. Then you need to understand the industry-specific requirements. For example, again, we'll take the healthcare example. So for healthcare, HIPAA is applicable. If you are capturing the payment card data, you will have PCI DSS compliance requirements. So understanding those requirements is important. And how you will understand which requirements are applicable? From understanding the business core activities, which we have seen in last slide. Then next is security audits requirements. Since you are having this PCI DSS or a GDPR requirements, right? So what these compliance requirements say that at what frequency you need to conduct the security audits. Are those internal security audits mandatory, or you need to go with the third party, attested auditors? So that kind of inputs you will be able to capture from these things. Another thing is, if you are working on a project which is enhancing the security or implementing the new application into the existing environment, or you are thinking of migrating your existing workload to the cloud, that time your security audit reports are also important. because these audit reports will give you what is non-compliance and how you can make that compliant into your new environment, or what controls needs to be added for a new application to make those non-compliances into the last audit to the compliances. And you need to the vulnerability assessment and penetration testing reports also, because you can then either mitigate those vulnerabilities into the new environment, or you can put a monitoring controls to make sure that those vulnerabilities will be monitored if you are not able to patch them or mitigate them. Then if you are migrating these into the cloud, or you are implementing new applications, have you done the threat modeling? What threats you have identified, and what is the severity of those threats? So that inputs are important to selecting the security controls. Next one is capture the threats from the external threat intelligence. Where you are going to host these applications, or where is your cloud infrastructure located? What are the geographical threats? What are those industry specific threats? So that threat intelligence you can get from the external third parties. Then what is the risk profile? Have you done the risk assessment? So what is your organization's risk appetite? Have you identified which risks are acceptable? If the risks are not acceptable, have you treated them by transferring those risks by buying the insurance, and what are your residual risks? So you need to know those risks before even selecting the control or designing the security. And what are the business continuity and disaster recovery requirements for a particular business applications? Since when you are capturing the core business activity, you know which applications are business critical, and for that, those applications, what are the business continuity and disaster recovery requirements? Because you need not to have the same business continuity and disaster recovery for the application which is client oriented, or which is sales is depend on the application. That application maybe need probably a very high level of business continuity and disaster recovery, but the application like a HR, which is not required for 24/7. So disaster recovery and business continuity may be less important for those applications. So that kind of inputs you will be getting from knowing this business continuity and disaster recovery requirement, so that your security will be optimal and not over or under secured the applications. And what are the service level agreements or application level requirements? How we are going to actually resolve the priority one incident. This is very important, because this, depending on this, you need to know how many how your operations are going to work. Do you need to have a skilled resources 24/7, or you can have a skilled resources probably for some time of a day or one shift of a day? So once we know these business requirements from the design point of view, we will go to the next requirements, that is the data touch points. So for this is a digital era, right? So every organization is going digital, and data is going to be a very, very important. They say that data is the next oil, and actually then protecting that data is the security's main goal. And we have to protect the data for the entire data life cycle. That means from the generation of this data till the data is purged, or data is you have wiped out that data. And during this entire life cycle of data, wherever data is getting touched, or which are the points data is getting touched, you have to secure all those points. And this starts from the endpoints where data is getting generated. So these might be your laptops, desktops, tablets, smartphones, or even your IoT devices, which are actually capturing the data using the sensors. So these are the tools which you are going to use to key in the data, capture the data, or generate the data. So you have to protect these endpoints, as well as you have to protect the servers and VMs, because these on these servers or the virtual machines, your data, your applications are going to host it, and these applications are going to process the data. I have considered these servers and VMs also as endpoints, because those are the infrastructure components, and they also consider as endpoints from the IT infrastructure point of view, not from the user's point of view. The next touch point of the data is a transport. That is how the data is flowing. Data is flowing through your wired network, wireless network, or it is flowing through the internet, intranet, or it is flowing through the protected environment. So that touch point we have to actually consider when we are designing the security. Are you going to use the SDN? Then probably you have to make sure that what are the security features are provided by these SDN service providers. SDN is software defined network. So in a network, basically, you will have firewalls, secure gateways, your VPN gateways, you will have content filter and all these things. Then you will have IDS, IPS. So in a SDN, most of the times, many of these SDN vendors nowadays integrate those tools into these their SDN offerings. So you don't have to repeat or duplicate the work and add the latency to your network. So you have to understand what the features are provided by the SDN from the security point of view. The next data touch point is application. So once these applications can be web-based application, they might be the mobile application, or they might be thick client or thin client based applications, 2-tier, 3-tier, multi-tier applications, or these may be nowadays cloud native applications or maybe serverless applications. So you need to identify which are those application types which you are going to use into your environment, because your security is depending on those particular applications. For example, if you are going to have the cloud native application, then API security is very important. If you are going to have a serverless application, then making sure that those services calls which your application is going to make, and when the services call is closed, your memory is wiped out, because many attacks are happening into the residuals which are there into the memory. So those kind of requirements you need to have. Then if you are having a web-based application, then then make sure that it is a HTTPS based, so that your session is getting encrypted. If it is a mobile application, it is business critical application. Then if it is running into the unmanaged device or in a mobile, you have to consider that the application should be running into its own memory space, so that it will not interfere with the other applications which are loaded into your mobile. So that kind of security requirements you have to capture from the applications point of view. Next, the data touch point is the databases. So these databases are actually used for processing and creating the relations between the data which you are input and providing the views to the applications and at the end to the users of these applications. So what are the security features these databases are providing? Are they providing the feature to the schema level protection, saying that which schema points will be having access to which user? Can you define the role-based access to the schema? Is the data is going to be encrypted when it is stored into databases, or do you need to have a separate encryption requirement for that? Who is going to manage the encryption keys? Who is going to manage the roles? Who is going to define the roles into your databases? So all that requirements you need to capture as a part of your database security requirements. Then this data will be stored into your storage. So this into the storage for the future requirements, or processing into the bulk. So this storage can be a storage area network, or it can be network added storage, or it can be cloud based storage like Amazon S3 gateways. So here also again you have to identify the same, who will be access to the storage, what kind of access they will be having. Are they going to be read-write access or only read access? Is the data stored into this storage will be encrypted, and who is going to manage that encryption? All that inputs you need to have from the storage security point of view. Then comes a backup or the archives. So we have seen that as per your industry standard or your country specific requirement, right, you need to store the data for a long term. For example, in finance, right, you have a requirement saying that each transaction has to be stored for minimum 5 to 7 years. Obviously you are not going to store that transaction for 7 years into your storage devices, because storage devices are costly. So you will be taking a backup, or you will archiving those kind of transactions into the archival systems. So whether these backup requirements are online or they are offline. The offline backup is a very cheap, right? And online backup is a costly. But sometimes for creating the business use, or for the audits, you need to keep the data for online. So you have to identify those kind of business requirements. Now, once we identify all these requirements, then we will start, deciding the technical security controls. For example, endpoints, you will be going for anti-malware, or you will be going for endpoint detection and response system. You will have a DLP clients installed into that. You will be having the policy policy compliance client implemented, so that those will keep on monitoring policy compliances of your endpoints. Then in a network, as I said, you will be having firewalls, you will be having VPN gateways, you will be having content filterings. And when you go to the cloud, you will be having a CASB, that is, making sure that all the security policies which need to be implemented will be implemented across the cloud and your data centers in your hybrid environment. So you will be having a CASB kind of tools to be implemented. Then application security requirements will be, is your application tested for the static code testing? Are these developers patched up all these findings from the static code, or there are some vulnerabilities which are still left open because of the release? So how you are going to take care of those vulnerabilities? Has this application tested into the production environment for the vulnerabilities and penetration testing? Because testing the static code is one part of it, but when you implement the application into the actual IT infrastructure, the entire IT infrastructure using your server operating system, your server infrastructure, your network interfaces, all that acts as a one unit, and identifying the vulnerabilities of that whole unit is very important. Then I think we have spoken about the database security, encryption, role-based access controls, and all that. Storage also we have spoken. The backup, right? A backup is also important. When you are backing up your data, it has to be encrypted, because we have seen a lot of attacks which are happening into the Amazon S3 buckets, right? Why? Because those data is not either encrypted, or access are not controlled to the certain users. So making sure that your backup is also protected by encrypting and restricting the access control is important. Now, having implemented all these security tools and technologies, configuring them is not the end of security. So how we are going to manage the day-to-day operations of this security infrastructure is also important. And from that point of view, you need to understand the operational requirement of this security. So do you have a standard operating system procedures defined? If not, you have to define those standard operating procedures for the security controls which you are additionally deploying. At what frequency you need to conduct the security testing, that is vulnerability assessment and penetration testing. Are you going to conduct external vulnerability assessment once a month, or and internal vulnerability assessment once in 6 months, or you want to conduct the internal vulnerability assessment also once in every month? Because you might have identified there are lot of threats which are there, or your security intelligence which you have captured as a part of the business intelligence says that tells you that there are threats. So you need to keep on monitoring, keep on testing your internal assets as well. So those kind of requirements you will be identified as a part of the security testing. Then audits. Who will be conducting these internal audits and external audits? At what frequency this audit needs to be conducted? So what kind of audit requirements are there? What kind of access you need to give these auditors to your environment? So you will capture that requirement as a part of the operational requirement. Then once you deploy the control and configure the policies and set the processes, it's not end of it, because you have to actually keep on assessing whether those policies are still intact. Whatever you have configured, those are still intact, whether your environment is compliant to those policies or not. For example, you have got a patch implementation policy, right? And you have to say that n-1. N is the release of the current patch, -1 is the last release, right? So all your server needs to comply to the n-1. So is that policy is getting implemented? Are your servers are complying to that policy? So you have to actually do the assessment of those policy implementations. You have to see whether the processes are effective or not, are these processes are sufficient, or you need to modify those processes to add the efficiency into your operation. So you have to assess your processes as well. Then technical controls. For example, if you implemented the firewall, and you know, the when we implement the firewall and configure the rules, that's not it, right? We keep on adding the firewall rules every now and then. So because of that rule additions, is your firewall performance gone down? Is it operating efficiently, or do you have to go through the rule base and probably purge some of the rules which are not used for last 6 months or last 3 months? So that kind of controls assessment, technical control assessment, you have to do from the effectiveness or the efficiency point of view. Then you have to conduct the risk assessment to identify the new risk, because you know the security is a very dynamic thing. The threats are ever evolving. The threat vector, because of the business changes or because of the new tools and technologies, the threat vector is always changing. So to cope up with that dynamic threat environment, you have to actually do the risk assessment. So at what frequency you are going to do this risk assessment, that has to be defined as a part of your operational requirement. Then service level requirements. Are you going to go with the business defined service levels and operational requirements, or for the security you need to have specific requirements? For example, certain incidents into the business maybe have certain priority. One incident may take 4 hours to resolve, but in case of security, that is not acceptable. Maybe you need to have your priority 1 incident resolved within 2 hours. So that kind of security specific service level requirements and operational requirements you have to define over here. Then you have to conduct the policy reviews, because these regulators keep on adding more and more restrictions, or organization keeps on getting more and more digitization done. They may be adding some automation into your environment, and because of that the policy needs to be changed. So when are you going to review this policy? Are you going to review this policy only after the major changes, or the periodic review is required? So that you will be defining over here. Then reviewing the standard operating process documents and updating them, because processes are basically, as you keep on running your security operations, you identify the areas to improvement. So those areas of improvement which are identified as a part of daily operation needs to incorporate into standard operating process documents. So you will be keep on updating those. Then what are the reporting requirements? At which reports need to be generated, to whom they have to be distributed, at what frequency those reports needs to be generated. We have to capture those requirements from the reporting point of view. And last but not the least, we have to know which are these users who are actually using this application, generating our data, using our data, and processing that data. So these users might be the end users, which are from the organization or which are external to your organization. For example, in an e-commerce environment, right? So users will be anybody who is going to your website and want to purchase the thing. So you will not have any control on those users. So how you will be authenticating those users? So that you have to define over here. Are you going to create the users or there, or you are going to go with the third-party authentication? Like you can probably authenticate them with a Facebook, or you authenticate them with a Google. So that kind of requirements you have to identify for the users where you don't have any control. For your corporate users, who will be generating who will be managing those users by creating those users, deleting those users, defining the access control requirements of those users. So that information you have to capture over here. And the next thing is security awareness. You have to keep on generating the security awareness between these users from the policy point of view. So which are those policy, which are the acceptable behavior for the users? How to identify the phishing attacks? As Kathy has said, so many privacy related inputs you have to identify. So all that has to go as a part of your security awareness training. So you have to capture those requirements from the awareness training points of view when you will be conducting those security trainings. At what frequency you will be conducting, how you will make sure that your users understood your security policies and the security requirements and their compliance with that. And if they are not compliant, what are the consequences? Have they understood that? How you will test those things? So those inputs you have to capture over here. And when you capture all these four pillars of your holistic view, you will be actually getting the freedom to pick and choose the security controls which will be optimum to your environment, and which way your environment will not be loaded with the too many security controls or too less security controls, and you will be able to protect your organization's data, and at the same time your business will be happy because you are not hindering their client experience. So this sounds very hunky and dory, but this is not the end of it. We have seen the security attacks are almost every day there is a news about database, something has been breached, some organization has been breached. Why this is happening when we are putting so much of a technical control, process control, policy controls, and all these things? Because for attackers they have to just find out one vulnerability or one 0-day kind of vulnerability or one weakness into your environment, and encash on that to get into your environment and make your business down. When the attacks are getting materialized, your organization actually has to go through a lot of things. The recent example I can give you is a Garmin the ransomware attack, right? When this ransomware attack happened into last month on the Garmin website, the website and their all applications were down for 7 days. Can you imagine your business is completely down for 7 days and how much revenues you might have lost? Garmin is basically into the GPS and the navigation service provider for the aviation and the automobile industry, as well as they are into the fitness this thing. And during the time when the website went down, luckily the aviation and all those things were not into their peak of the usage. So Garmin might have business wise they might have affected loss, but it actually the organization loses the reputation in the client's mind, and that is why you need to look into the security into a very different way. So the aim of the security program is protecting the organization data, right? And we have got this security triad, that is confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So in this, when we take care of the availability, we basically take care of the availability from the security point of view, that all the security controls are available all the time as per the business requirements. But we, as a security professional, normally don't pay much attention to the availability of the application or the IT infrastructure. But as you have seen that if the ransomware attack happens or the phishing attack happens, your business service or business application goes down, and that is where we have to actually expand our availability to make sure that if the attack is happening, still your organization services or the business critical applications are still operating at the minimal level, and that is nothing but a cyber resilience. That means when your organization is actually going through a cyber attack, you will be providing either you will be able to deter that attack, stop that attack, or probably reduce that attack. If you are not able to reduce the impact of that attack, then probably you will be still make sure that your applications are running at the optimum level. For example, DDoS attack is happening, then you will be probably implement the DDoS mitigation controls and buy the DDoS mitigation services, so that the service provider will be actually monitoring the DDoS attack, and they will try to make sure that the bandwidth is available, or you will be going to go with a multiple service provider, so that if one service provider's link is down because of the DDoS attack, you will probably have the other service available. If the one application in one particular region is impacted by the DDoS attack, then probably you'll have the application available into the other region, so that the business will be still running. So that is where you will actually keep the application running. Maybe the performance will be degraded because the other link has got a less bandwidth, the other region has got a latency, but still the service is available for your users. Then if you are not able to even do that, then probably the last thing what you will do is you will be actually trying to recover from that cyber attack as fast as you can. And how this can be achieved, if you have got the business continuity and disaster recovery plans, those are tested. If you have got the attack based incident management plan, you will be able to recover your business from the attack at a very fast or a very less time period. So we now know what is cyber resiliency. So what are the cyber resiliency requirements? So for cyber if you want to implement this program into your organization, you need to know that since the cybersecurity environment is very dynamic, attack vectors are keep on changing. The known attacks are also becoming lethal over a period of time. Take an example of the ransomware attack, which started 3 years back. That time it was just an encryption of the endpoints. That's it. Then how this attack evolved over a period of time? Then they started encrypting your backup, and now they started exfiltrating your data before encrypting your endpoint as well as your backup. And now they're holding this data as a hostage till you pay the ransomware. So since these attacks are actually evolving, and the threats are increasing, the business environment is increasing. Take example of this pandemic, right? So many of the organizations have suddenly transferred many of the applications to the cloud and be digital. Many of the users who are actually working from home for the first time. So this business environment is also changing. So in that case, your cyber resiliency program has to update it or keep on changing as per your threats or as per the changes into the business requirement. And that's why you need to have a support from the senior management, and you need to have a long-term budget to maintain this program throughout the the life of this program. And when you are actually implementing the cyber resiliency program, as I said, you will not have the cyber resiliency program as a blanket to all the applications which are hosted into your organization. So you will be actually pick and choose which applications are most important to the business from the revenue point of view, from the compliance point of view, and you will design that resilience program for those particular applications. And for that, you need to know where these applications are hosted, which are the IT infrastructure is used to host and run these applications. So have you identified those assets which are hosting the business critical applications? So that is important. Then you have to classify these assets, saying that, okay, this is the most critical asset because it is running my business critical application. This is not so critical asset. So that classification has to be done before implementing the cyber resiliency program. So that will give you the optimum budget for your cyber resiliency program. Then the risk inputs from the risk management program are important, because if you have got risk identified into your organization, then some risk you might have treated using the mitigation plan. So some risk you might have transferred to the insurance, but there are some residual risks which are neither you have mitigated and not transferred. So those residual risks are actually a threat, and those risks you have to consider as a part of the cyber resiliency program. And that is the main difference between going security with a risk management based and the cyber resiliency based. Cyber resiliency based security program takes care of the residual risk as well, and make sure that those risks are getting mitigated by either implementing the applications into the different region, or having multiple links, or some kind of controls adding into your environment, not from the security point of view, maybe it is from the IT infrastructure point of view, or maybe it is application point of view. So those risks are getting identified, and that's why a good risk management program is an important requirement for your cyber resiliency. Then disaster recovery program, which is implemented and tested, is important. What happens if you have got a cyber disaster recovery program and you have not tested it? Then you don't know, whether that program is going to work, whether anything in that program needs to be changed, and how long it will take to recover from the disaster. This disaster might be the natural disaster, or this disaster might be because of the security attack. So those disaster recovery programs which are tested and fine-tuned are another important requirement from the resiliency point of view. Then fail-safe business continuity program. Fail-safe business continuity program is basically as I said, you have to make sure that your business will be running, and how that has to be incorporated into your IT infrastructure by selecting the multiple region, by selecting the multiple service providers. That is the fail-safe business continuity program. So this is all about the resiliency. So what are the advantages of implementing the cyber resiliency? As I said, first thing is you are going to take care of the residual risk, so you don't have to worry about the residual risk. That's one thing. Second thing is when the cyber attack happens and you disclose the breach, your market value goes down. Your share suddenly goes down. You can search for a web now, depending on the breach disclosure and the share value of that particular organization. You will say 10 to 15% share value suddenly drops off, and that is a business loss. That is from the share point of view. Second is if your business application is down, and that application is a sales application, right? So your sale is getting reduced, and that is a loss to the business. Implementing this cyber resiliency program, actually you will lessen up that burden of the business losses. So that is the important advantage of the cyber resilience. The next advantage is the reputational loss. Because if you say that you're attacked and your website is down for some time, the client are going to look for the alternative vendor, and they will go with that vendor, and you will not only lose your reputation in the market by losing the client, but you will be losing the money as well. The third thing is the regulatory compliance requirement, right? If your data is breached, so each of the data privacy, like GDPR or CCPA for the California, defines the fine for the personal data breach. So implementing the cyber resiliency program, probably you will be able to reduce those data breaches, and in turn reduce the fines for these regulatory requirements. So those are the cyber resiliency benefits. Now let us look at the cyber resiliency framework. So any program to be successfully implemented, there are three basic things need to be taken care of. One is you have to define the goals very clearly. Then you have to define the objectives which will be satisfying those goals, and the techniques which you will be used to achieve those objectives and the goals. So in case of cyber resiliency framework, the goal is basically you should be able to anticipate the attack which is happening, and the impact of that cyber attack which is having into your environment, so that you will be able to put in the adequate controls to reduce the impact of it, or probably you will have the processes to recover from that attack. If you are not able to anticipate that or prevent the attack, then you will have another goal, which will be your infrastructure should be able to withstand that attack and still keep on providing the services. If you are not able to do that, your next goal should be recovering as fast as you can from that attack. And the last and the important goal is your resiliency program should be evolved as you go through these revisions, or go through these attacks, or or go through your learnings from recovering the attack or anticipating the attacks, you'll keep on evolving your cyber resiliency program. So there are the four goals you will be achieving as a part of your cyber resiliency program. To achieve these four goals, you need to have understanding of your business. So that is your first objective. That what are, as we said, right, as a part of your holistic security, you also you need to understand your business core business activities. You need to understand those assets which are running these core business activities. Then you have to prepare for either defending the attack, or you have to prepare for withstanding that attack. And for that you have to have the prevent and avoid mechanism which you will be implementing into that. Then you have to continue your business applications in terms of having it put into the other region. You will be, otherwise you will be running those application into the constraint environment. Reconstitute, that is when you are not able to continue the operation, then you have to recover and reconstitute or rebuild your environment to make sure that the business application is running. And then you have to transform your IT infrastructure by including the additional controls to make sure that next time the similar or different attack happens, you will be able to withstand it, or you will be able to defend it and not let your business service go down. And for that you have to, if it requires, you will be re-architecting your IT infrastructure, you will be re-architecting your cyber security. And what techniques you will be using to achieve this is an adaptive response. To actually respond to, excuse me, anybody wants to say something?
Running short of time, so
okay, so I will just wind it up. So probably you need to have the your incident management processes defined as per the attack types. So that will help you to address a particular attack at a very fast level and respond to that attack. Then you will have obviously you'll have analytics done for your security monitoring, so that you will be able to identify or anticipate the attack before it happens. Then you will have a diversity of controls. For example, you will not be having the same firewalls of the same vendor as the internal firewall as well as external firewall. You will be probably having multiple vendors providing the same security controls to you. Then you will have redundancy into your environment. You will have a segmentation done into your environment. Right now, you may be doing the these VPNs for your VPCs for your environment, but you probably have to defend your environment in a better way by doing the micro segmentation of your environment. So these are the techniques which you will be using as a part of your cyber resiliency. And I think that's it from my presentation point of view. So if there are any questions, then I can go for the questions.
Wow, Sujata, that was literally, as someone said, that was an entire course packed into a 50-minute duration in slides. So we have a couple of questions from our audience. How do we protect sensitive information handled and stored by third-party vendors?
Okay, so for the third-party vendors, there is a third-party risk assessment. So before you are getting engaged into the third party to hand over your information or allow them to use your information or process or capture your information, you will be doing the third-party risk assessment. And these third-party risk assessments are actually the business risk point of view, whether this third party which you are going to engage, how long it is going to last into the business environment. Then you will be doing their risk assessment from the technical point of view, how they are going to process, which application they are going to use, where these applications will be hosted, are they having enough security controls. Then third thing, you will be going to assess them from the process point of view. So what are the security processes and procedures they are having to protect your data, how they are going to define their users, which information, who will be having access, how long those access will be there. whether they have got the privileged users defined and the activities are monitored. All that, the risk assessment, third-party risk assessment you will be conducting. And once you are satisfied with that risk assessment, by knowing the residual risk, by knowing the risk accepted or risk transferred, you will make a decision whether that has to be transferred to them or you will be looking for the better vendor.
Okay,
so
thank you
I
for
hope that answers the question.
Yes, that does. One more question before I let you go. What kind of cybersecurity professional do companies recruit to study a company's applications, processes, and users to create cybersecurity policies?
Pardon, can you just repeat the first part of the question?
What kind of cybersecurity professionals do companies recruit to study a company's applications, processes, and users to create cybersecurity policies? So you were giving us a very brief, very detailed overview about the need for creating policies when you start talking about databases, your virtual machines, your servers, and all of that. So what sort of a professional do you hire to come into an organization and start giving you advice on the types of policies you need to implement?
Okay, so these professionals which you are hiring will have extensive experience into the security domain. When I said the security domain, so probably they will be coming from the hands-on experience of implementing the things, because these are the people who are able to evaluate your processes. Then the person which you are hiring should have got a consultancy background. They should be understanding the compliance requirements. They should be understanding these security standard, for example, ISO 27000 requirements, or they should be understanding the NIST requirement if the client is from the Europe, or they are able to understand the data privacy laws. So they may not be having a legal background of understanding these compliances, but they should be understanding the technical requirements for that. So you will be hiring these professionals which are having a extensive security background as well as a consultancy thing. So they should be able to understand the requirements as well as they should be able to compare those with the best practices and the global security standards.
Okay, thank you so much for that answer as well, Sujata. And before I let you go, thank you so much. That was a very in-depth technical presentation. As I said, one of our speakers has also said you packed an entire courseware content into a 50-minute duration. Thank you so much.
I'm sorry, I think I had to run it a little faster. My laptop was also, I think, dying. So sorry for that. And thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to I think, run a marathon on the security in these 50 minutes. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.